What you are looking at right here is the human body functioning as a highly connected biological power grid. Up at the top, the brain acts as the central control tower, specifically the HPA axis, sending steady, controlled pulses of energy down to operate the complex machinery of the abdomen. Biologists call this unrelenting flow a thermal surge. Instead of useful energy, this massive hormone dump acts like raw, unregulated heat tearing through delicate internal wiring. Carry too much voltage for too long, and the biological infrastructure of the gut begins to physically degrade under the thermal load. This animation illustrates exactly how that heat damages our internal firewalls. The thick, protective gel you see coating the inner walls of the intestines is the mucin layer. Watch what happens as waves of thermal energy from chronic stress pass over it. The extreme heat short-circuits the biological assembly lines that maintain this gel, causing the protective slime to thin out and crack apart. As that vital insulation fails, the intestinal walls lose their physical integrity. Small FAPs form in the gut lining, creating a dangerous condition known as intestinal permeability, or leaky gut, where waste materials can easily slip out of the power station. To understand how the body defends against this meltdown, we have to look deep inside the intestinal environment. Certain individuals possess a specialized strain of beneficial bacteria that act as an elite repair crew, highly trained cooling technicians patrolling the gut to neutralize the stress response. Here is a diagram of one of those cooling technicians at work. This bacterial cell is equipped with a unique biological tool called a DES-like enzyme. As jagged, glowing cortisol molecules hit the gut, the bacteria capture them before the heat causes widespread damage. Look closely at how the cell handles that captured molecule. The DES-like enzyme acts like microscopic scissors, snipping the stress hormone apart. The bacteria consume the cortisol for fuel, recycling the dangerous heat into harmless, smooth chemical byproducts known as androgens. Cleaning up that hormone overflow does something crucial for the mind. It preserves the body's supply of a protein called BDNF. Think of BDNF as a premium brain fertilizer that helps our neurons grow and stay resilient against mental pressure. If the gut lacks these specific bacterial workers to dismantle the thermal load, that unregulated cortisol travels straight up into the bloodstream. It eventually reaches the brain, where the biological power surge scrambles the delicate circuitry responsible for emotional stability, leading directly to issues like depression. This vulnerability is magnified during adolescence. This period is the body's massive construction phase, a highly sensitive window of development where the permanent wiring and infrastructure of the gut's power grid are still being laid down. Because the adolescent system hasn't yet built the resilience to handle high voltage, a heavy surge of cortisol during these years is incredibly destructive. The stress causes a catastrophic drop in alpha diversity, meaning the total variety of protective cooling fans and bacterial workers simply melts away before the grid fully matures. Losing those specific microbial workers triggers an energy crisis. Without them, the gut stops producing a microscopic molecule known as acetylcarnitine. This molecule is the essential delivery vehicle that carries fuel straight into your cellular power plants, the mitochondria, to be burned for clean energy. Strip away that fuel delivery mechanism, and the body enters metabolic gridlock. The cells feel perpetually drained, triggering a low-level, constant immune panic known as simmering inflammation. If the thermal surge is left uncooled during these formative years, the adolescent power grid hardens into the state of permanent miswiring. Moving into adulthood, the central power station remains fragile and prone to frequent brownouts, setting the individual up for lifelong energy crashes and persistent mood disorders. The consequences of this microbial depletion extend far past fatigue, moving all the way to the outer defensive perimeter of the gut.
When the biological station overheats, it completely bankrupts the resources our immune system needs to keep us safe. We can see this dynamic modeled here, illustrating what researchers call the gut stress tumor axis. On the left side of this diagram, a healthy, dense cluster of microbe nodes constantly powers active, illuminated immune cells. But on the right, where the microbe cluster is depleted, dark cells multiply unchecked. Watch the connection break between the sparse microbes and the immune system. Certain cooling fans normally produce acetate, the primary battery power for our elite security guards, CD8 plus T cells. Without those microbes, the T cells starve, lose their illumination, and completely stop hunting for rogue cancer cells. At the same time the body's security guards run out of battery, the thermal surge kills off another vital strain of bacteria responsible for producing a chemical called butyrate. Butyrate acts as the body's natural cellular fire retardant, keeping cellular growth in check. Strip away that natural fire retardant, and a highly sensitive cellular communication line called WNT beta-catenin becomes hyperactive. This overactive signal acts precisely like gasoline poured onto a fire, instructing mutant cells to abandon their internal brakes and multiply at an alarming rate. By melting down the gut's microscopic workforce, chronic stress effectively unplugs the body's primary fire department. The immune system loses both its elite hunters and its natural chemical brakes, leaving the internal environment completely defenseless against aggressive, tumorous growths. Looking at this macroscopic video, we can observe how the breakdown of the gut wall immediately degrades physical performance. Through these structural breaks in the porous intestinal lining, microscopic, jagged pieces of bacterial waste are leaking directly into the fast-moving bloodstream. These escaping pieces of bacterial debris are called endotoxins. Instead of being safely contained within the digestive station, these toxins seep through the broken firewalls and circulate freely throughout the wider biological network. The moment the immune system detects these circulating toxins, it triggers a massive false alarm. Because endotoxins usually indicate a severe pathogen, the body incorrectly assumes it is under a full-scale, life-threatening infection. To combat this perceived threat, the body initiates a complete system blackout. It violently diverts all available power away from the brain and the muscle hardware, hoarding every ounce of energy to fight what is, in reality, a phantom emergency. This is exactly why intense physical training yields no results when you're chronically stressed. True physical recovery is physically impossible while the intestines remain leaky. The body cannot rebuild torn muscle fibers or restore strength when the central power grid is continually exhausting itself fighting a false alarm. To stop this cycle of exhaustion, we have to look at the primary neural pathway connecting the damaged intestinal station back up to the brain's command center, the vagus nerve. Rebuilding the physical hardware of the gut requires active intervention. Scientists are now utilizing specially selected friendly bacteria, known as psychobiotics. When ingested, these act as elite precision maintenance crews, deploying directly into the digestive station to initiate a full system reboot. This animation illustrates their primary repair protocol. Here, we see the thick network boundary of the gut lining, complete with several distinct structural breaks. Watch as the specialized psychobiotic nodes approach those fractures. They stimulate the body to produce a type of biological glue called SIGA, deploying a thick sealing layer directly over the gaps to restore the wall's physical integrity. As the physical leaks are patched, the psychobiotics perform a second critical function. The newly sealed boundary lights up, sending steady rhythmic pulses upwards along the vertical pathway of the vagus nerve. These pulses are powerful calming chemicals, like GABA, traveling straight to the brain's control tower to manually override and shut down the stress alarm. By actively sealing the structural leaks at the foundation and forcing the brain to cut off the flow of cortisol at the source, this precision maintenance stops the internal fires. It pulls the body out of its constant state of emergency and restores it to homeostasis, a state of steady, balanced, and perfectly cool energy.